Adveshta sarvabhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankara samadukha sukha kshami santushtaha satatam yogi atatma dridha nishchayaha mayyarpita mano buddhir yo madbhakta same priyaha. Translation: those devotees are very dear to me who are free from malice towards all living beings, who are friendly and compassionate. They are free from attachment to possessions and egotism, equipoised in happiness and distress, and ever forgiving. They are ever content, steadily united with me in devotion, self-controlled, of firm resolve, and dedicated to me in mind and intellect. And then he goes on, nirahankaraha, freedom from ego. Ego is the sign of forgetfulness of God and ignorance. Now the firefly can be proud at night because it has got its own light that it generates. However, when the sun rises, the firefly can no longer be proud. So likewise, if we have forgotten the glory of God, then we can be proud. Ha ha ha, I have created this 3-storied house. That means we have forgotten that God created the whole world. Otherwise, where's the question of pride? But pride is the first material defect that has engulfed the soul. Because the soul has started thinking, I'm this body, I'm this mind, these possessions are mine. So it's the first defect to come and the last defect to go. There was a roadside inn called Silver Bells. So one traveler came in and asked the inn owner, how is business? That man said, business is really doing badly. This traveler was a wise guy who understood human nature. He said, I'll tell you how to make it click. You change the name of your inn to 5 bells. And on the door, you hang a rope with 6 bells. So how will this make business click? Try it out. So that man did it. And the traveler returned next year. And he said, how is business? He said, wow, business is booming. Everybody comes to my inn to tell me that I have made a mistake in the bells that I have hung. Because there are 6 bells, while the name of the inn is 5 bells. So I tell them all, thank you so much for letting me know. And they all have become my customers. So the human nature, the ego that tells us that I know everything, the other person doesn't. So this ego is so natural to all of us. And if we ever happen to do something, the ego takes on the other form. I have done this, I have done that. So, we must always remain grounded. To remain grounded means to realize, whatever I may have done, if God wants, He can take it off in a moment. With all this bravado that science did this, science did that, and there is no God, He is the opiate of the masses, and suddenly we are in the midst of a pandemic, one little virus, and nobody understands how to handle it. So, we must keep that reality in mind of how powerful we actually are. If we have any power, it's coming from the source. And that source can withdraw it in a moment. Bahare duniya hai chand roza, न चल यहां सिर उठा उठा करके, खुदा ने ऐसे हजारों नक्शे बिगाड़ डाले बना बना करके. The classic example is given of the Titanic. In the year 1911, a ship was made by the great ambitions of the best engineers in Europe. And they said, we'll make a ship that will challenge the seas and the oceans. When the hull came down the river in Belfast in Ireland, it was the biggest man-made object of the world. Such big was the ship, like a small little town. And then the engineers and workers got to work. And in the year 1912, the ship was all ready to sail across the Atlantic. The engineers claimed, nothing can ever touch this ship. It was called the Titanic because of its size. It had a double hull to ensure that it would be proof against any kind of damage. It had 15 watertight compartments below with switches that could open or close it from above in the case of any contingency. It had 15 boiler rooms in it, and it was on its first voyage. So all the most elite gentry of Europe, they purchased tickets for that maiden voyage. And the ship started off. The first 4 days were uneventful. And the 4th night, the person on the deck, he thought he saw an iceberg right in front. So he raised the alarm, and at the last minute the engines were reversed and the ship was veered. So it side-swiped the glacier. They thought, we are safe. But they did not realize that it had a jagged edge below, which had created a 300-foot gash in the hull of the Titanic. And soon the alarm was raised. In the space of 1 hour, that ship went down, and about 600 people died there. When the news first came to America, people did not believe. So the news was conveyed wrongly that it did develop a hole, but it's being ferried across. And slowly the news came that this Titanic has sunk. And people took a profound message from it. The moment pride comes, I am infallible, God says, all right, really? Let's do a little correction there. So pride cometh before the fall. The devotee is one who has fallen. He became proud and got slapped, and became proud and got slapped, and slowly the wisdom dawned. This pride is obnoxious. So that devotee then is nirahankaraha. No, my Lord, all glory is yours. If I see in myself any goodness, it's your grace. If I see any badness, it's my lack of surrender to you. So let's take the next one. Sama dukkha sukha. He says now, those devotees who are equipoised in happiness and distress. Lord Krishna is not saying those who are calm when the sailing is smooth. He is saying those who are calm irrespective of turbulent or smooth weather. That is the important thing. Can you remain normal when things around you are abnormal, or when people around you are behaving abnormally? That is the braveness that we need to develop. When everything is calm and peaceful, you say, my mind is calm. What is the big deal? Anybody can do that. But the challenge is to retain the calmness. So we all want to be peaceful. And the problem is, we keep on making adjustments on the outside for my inner peace. If you tell your husband, if my mother-in-law changes her behavior, only then I can be peaceful. And the mother-in-law says, if the daughter-in-law can change her behavior, only then I will be peaceful. Everybody wants the other to change to find inner peace. And the fact is, the behavior of others is not in our control. So if we really want to find peace, it must be inside of us. Because if peace is dependent on outer things, it can be snatched away in a moment. But if you want that peace that nobody can snatch away from you, then you have to be equipoised in all kinds of circumstances. The story, I have told it recently, of this sage who went up into the Himalayas, and there he started meditating, and the seasons went by until the monsoon came. Now the Indian monsoon, it comes after the earth has been parched for 3 months, and the insects made merry, the frogs were croaking, and this monk sitting in his hut was getting disturbed in his meditation. And he said to himself, don't these creatures know that a monk is meditating inside? Finally, his indignance could be held back no further. He poked his head out of the window and said, quiet! Because he had elevated himself through his meditation, when he spoke, even nature responded, and all the frogs, they turned silent. In that complete lack of sound, the monk sat down to meditate again. But there was again a disturbing sound. And this was not from the outside, but from the inside. His own conscience started pricking. What I did, was it correct? They were just using the vocal box that God has given them. God has given frogs a big vocal box. Until the sound inside would grow bigger and bigger. So he now was obliged. He poked his head out of the window of the hut again and said, begin! All the creatures started making merry, tar tar, pit pit, gaw gaw gaw. So he sat down back to meditate. But this time he was completely peaceful. He had learned to make peace with the outside environment. That is the peace which Lord Krishna is talking about, which is irrespective of sukh and dukh, external happiness and distress. Arjun, those devotees are very dear to me. And a natural consequence, he says, Kshami. Kshami means forgiving. Forgiveness only releases us from wounds that would continue to fester if we don't forgive. So if somebody has hurt us, it is said, you don't have to forget. Otherwise, you go again, you will be hurt again. But learn to forgive. Forgiveness is the gift that we offer to ourselves. Forgiveness is emphasized in all the religious traditions of the world. Without forgiveness, you can never move ahead in spirituality. In the case of saints, this forgiveness becomes a nature. They don't have to say, that guy is so bad, but I have to forgive. One lady heard sermons on forgiving and she was unable to forgive until she was about to die. Now she had grown old and she was having some fatal problems. So the doctor said that you have got only 3 days to live. She called her enemy and said, I forgive you, only on the condition that I am going to die, because if I am going to live, then I will not forgive you. So that is like a forced kind of forgiveness. Now in the case of saints, that forgiveness becomes the nature. Look at Draupadi. Ashwatthama killed 5 of her sons. But Draupadi was such a saintly lady. The sons are dead, they cannot be brought back. Arjun, he bound Ashwatthama and dragged him in the presence of Draupadi and said, I will kill him as revenge. So Draupadi said, revenge? Revenge is not a good word. Because revenge is motivated by our own inner frustration. Draupadi said, think about his mother. I understand what it means to a mother when the child dies, because my 5 children have died. I don't want his mother to suffer like that. Release him. So, we must learn from Ratan Tata how to handle people who have hurt us. Ratan Tata took over as the chairman of Tata Motors in India in 1991. And he had this dream project of making an indigenous car in India without any imported technology. And in 1998, the Indica was launched. The Indica was India's first indigenous car. But in 1999, in the space of 1 year, they realized it was not doing well. And they put it up for sale. At that time, Ford Motors expressed interest in purchasing this factory. So Ratan Tata flew to Detroit with his entire board. And they had a meeting with Bill Ford and their members. And Bill Ford, he insulted Ratan Tata. He said, you don't know anything about the car business. Why did you get into it? Ratan Tata was quiet. That evening, he was in deep thought. He didn't go back to the meeting next day. He took his board members and flew to India. And there he focused on the motor line. And he made it a world-class business until they were producing some of the most famous and best-selling brands in the world. And in 2008, the wheel turned around. Ford Motors was close to bankruptcy. And two of their lines were doing very badly. One was the Jaguar car and the other Land Rover. Jaguar and Land Rover. So Tata Motors offered to purchase these cars. And Bill Ford arrived in Bombay for a discussion. And he said to Ratan Tata, "You're doing us a favor by purchasing these cars." Ratan Tata was quiet. He could have hurt the other, but he understood the simple principle. If there is a line drawn and you want to make it small, you don't have to rub it off. You draw a bigger line by the side of it. So if somebody has hurt you, the best thing is to become even better. That is the best way to repay the hurt. This is a positive way. So always take your life in a positive direction.